welcome. This is so nice to have all of you here in person, in Zoom. I really want to give you a really warm welcome to all of you and to our esteemed panelists for joining us today at the event on exploring synergies and trade-offs for transformations to the Sustainable Development Goals and beyond. It is a privilege for IPI to co-host this timely discussion with Keio University, the National Institute for Environmental Studies, and the Institute for Global Environmental Studies. There's more. We would also like to recognize the support from the Government of Finland, Stockholm Environment Institute, the Global Forum for National SDG Advisory Bodies, and Ministry of the Environment of Japan. Just the amount of partners in this event pinpoints the relevance and just like the importance of the topic. And it's a topic that like really needs this type of collaboration. So the fact that there's so many partners means that we're going in the right direction. This event is taking place in the middle of the high-level political forum, and the buzz in New York here is palpable. You know, after some years of being a bit more quiet because of COVID and all of that, it's really nice to have that sense of people coming together to discuss such an important framework. And we are really happy to be part of that. As you know, we're here to discuss synergies and trade-offs. And what does that mean? You know, when we created the SDGs, our idea was that it was a tapestry of connections. SDG 1 was deeply connected with SDG on gender and women. You know, reducing poverty of women was deeply connected with the empowerment of women. SDG 16 on societies was connected with climate, was connected with energy. It was a tapestry. But yet, to this day, we still see it a little bit in boxes. And it has been really hard for us to make that mental shift of seeing it as a tapestry of deeply connection. So it's really, I'm really happy here to be with my old friend, Nori, who from the beginning, we have been discussing the SDGs in that way of a network. And this event will focus on how we can make that mental shift, that transformation from boxes and silos to a network that needs more work on synergies and eliminating the potential trade-offs. It's easier said than done, of course. So we have a wonderful panel here that is going to talk about case studies that will illuminate our minds in terms of how we reduce these trade-offs and enhance synergies. But before going to that, we'll go into a 2-minute video message from Mr. Yutaka Matsuwa, Vice Minister for Global Environmental Affairs in the Environment Ministry of Japan. So if you can turn to the closest screen, that would be great.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matsuzawa Yutaka, Vice Minister for Global Environmental Affairs, Ministry of the Environment of Japan. I would like to express my deep appreciation to Professor Keio and host and co-host organizations of today's side event at this critical timing of the high-level political forum 2024. The world is facing a triple global crisis: climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. In order to solve the interlinked crisis as well as to achieve SDGs, we have to take an integrated approach and promote synergies while minimizing trade-offs. Therefore, Ministry of the Environment of Japan has been strongly advocating the importance of promoting synergies. Last year, G7 under Japanese presidency committed to leveraging synergies at the Climate, Energy and Environment Ministers meeting. At UNEA 6 last March, Japan proposed the draft resolution on promoting synergies co-sponsored by 6 countries, which was successfully adopted. The importance of leveraging synergies is also referred to in the G7 Turin Communique of Climate, Energy and Environment Ministers last April, as well as in the OECD Ministerial Declaration last May. The resolution of UNEA 6 encourages member states to enhance synergies when implementing their respective obligations under multilateral environmental agreements, and to collect and share best practices in order to enhance knowledge and understanding of synergies. We can't do if we don't know. To implement this resolution, Japan believes cross-disciplinary activities from scientists is crucial. Based on cross-disciplinary scientific analysis, Japan would like to cooperate with international bodies and other countries in collecting relevant knowledge as well as good practices from all sectors of society, and elaborating guidance to incorporate synergies for developing countries in particular. To this end, our ministry launched a 3-year research project last April. Professor Kanye is the principal researcher of the project. We expect that it will provide us with tangible tools for countries, including subnational and local governments, to enhance synergies and minimize trade-offs, as well as cross-disciplinary scientific products on how to enhance the synergies between targets of SDGs, especially among climate change, biodiversity, sustainable production and consumption or circular economy. Japan looks forward to working with various research institutions to solve this significant issue, as we consider that it is hard to accomplish these things only by one country, and relevant knowledge exists within all sectors of society. We count your active participation. Then the Ministry of the Environment can support UNEP to disseminate the collected relevant knowledge, good practices, and tools to each country. While UNEP is the main organization in implementing the UN resolution on synergies, Japan has identified 3 other major partners or places to promote synergies. First one is the Global Conference on Strengthening Synergies between the Paris Agreement and the SDGs, organized by UNDESA and UNCCC. A group of experts has been issuing the report, including good practices, since last year. The second Global Synergy report will be published at the special event in the morning of the 16th July. In addition, the 5th Global Conference on Synergy between the Paris Agreement and the SDGs will be held in Brazil on 5th and to 6th September in the margin of G20 meetings. We expect the importance of synergies will be reflected in the outcome document of G20. The second partner is the Initiative of Climate, Nature and People Declaration in COP28, initiated by UAE. It aims to realize synergies between measures tackling against climate change and biodiversity loss. The initiative comprises of 10 international initiatives such as the NDC Partnership and NBSAP Accelerator, and coordinates the cooperation among the initiatives. We believe synergies needs to be incorporated into policies supporting NDCs and NBSAPs in order to solve the triple crisis. The third is an Asia-Pacific Synergy report. We would like to compile good practices and lessons learned in this report and produce it next year. We collaborate with UNESCAP, ADB, JICA, and other relevant organizations and research institutions for producing the report next year. With that, I will conclude my remarks, and I hope that today's discussions will lead to enhanced synergies for further achievement of the SDGs. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And now, before I turn to Professor Kanye, I want to mention that Japan Foundation is also a partner, and I omitted in my previous remarks. So Nori, professor at the Graduate School of Media and Governance, Keio University, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jimena. Thank you for the audience to be here. I'm Roesch Kakanie. I'm, as mentioned by our Vice Minister for Environment, we are launching this project focusing on synergies and trade-off, particularly focusing on SDGs and other environmental issues, but also this issue, as Jimena mentioned earlier, is also related to other non-environmental issues as well. So we will be quite inclusive to address this synergies and trade-off. My talk starts with Global Sustainable Development Report that was released at the General Assembly last year. I was one of the 15 authors to contribute to this report. As you may be quite well aware of, we have reached only 15% of SDGs at the halfway through 2030. So the achievement is very low, but we have to enhance actions and accelerate actions towards achieving the SDGs. So this means that the importance of utilizing more efficiently the resources that we have is more and more important. This is a model that we came up with in the GSDR report to show how transformation could take place. We call it S-curve, starting with emergence phase of sustainability transformation, leading to acceleration, and then eventually stabilizing the transformation. What is necessary is, of course, emergence is important. Lots of startups, lots of new technologies, new initiatives are necessary here, but we have already seen some of them out there. What is required now is accelerating actions, and here is a very difficult challenge we are facing. So the gap is that SDGs are made by member states to the United Nations, which is divided into 193 countries, whereas the goals are dealing with global. It's about the globe. It's about all the countries. So there's a gap between how it is made and how it should be implemented. And SDG rely on the nation states to implement it, but also at the same time, we have global space. For example, we have network, internet network, or any other space for connecting people globally. So the question is how we can link it up together. Also, we need to find solutions at the same time at national or local level, because things are happening at local level. So while goals and targets are global, we have to think about how to internalize it, how to localize those actions at domestic level. And here we think transformation interlinkages is important. And transformation takes place in an interlinked manner. As Jimena also mentioned at the beginning, poverty eradication is linked to gender equality, but also climate change and the construction of the city, and et cetera, et cetera. So you have to think more about how we can enhance synergies while eliminating trade-offs. So this is one of the issues that was highlighted in our report released last year, and there are several studies that we mentioned in the report. I think this will also be touched upon by Yvonne later in her presentation. But it's not only GSDR, but also other reports mentioned the importance of interlinkages in a different context. In biodiversity context, they also argue the importance of linking it with other issues, climate as well, a circular economy as well. So they're all talking about synergies and trade-offs, but informations are sort of segregated. It's individually discussed. So one of the things that we want to do in this project is to try to connect them together and try to find synergies of synergy report. So this is sort of background that we have, and I think this kind of thing was also mentioned by our minister, so I don't go into details about these. Climate and Synergy conference was held, and so we created this research project with the background that was also discussed by the Ministry of Environment. We focus on different issues, but also particular focus will be on, first of all, climate adaptation. We all recognize that climate adaptation is so much linked to development issue, but not so much study was done in the context of synergies and trade-offs. We have in Japan adaptation center at the National Institute of Environmental Studies, but they even don't know well about how their work could be linked to individual SDGs. So here is what we are trying to elaborate further to identify what kind of synergies could exist at local level and dig into that, and then try to find more general ideas how we can implement it as a tool for sustainability transformation. At UNEA 6 in Nairobi, as mentioned by our Vice Minister, there was a resolution adopted regarding promoting synergies. As you can see here, scientific findings show increasing environmental pressures and impacts and enhancing synergies, cooperation or collaboration are keys to overcome them and implement national environment policies and actions. But this goes even beyond environmental policies. So we have political willingness to address this issue as well. As mentioned, G7 mentioned also OECD conference was addressing the importance of addressing synergies and trade-offs. So basically our resources are limited. So in order to utilize it, we should focus more on synergies and trade-off issues. There is some initial research result that we came up with in existing studies as well. I don't think you can see it from the room here, but there are several different issues that are written on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, what kind of synergies and trade-offs can exist in those areas. Existing studies address these issues, but they are rather in an abstract manner. So we also think that it is important to find solutions at local level, which also requires contextualize the issues. But at the same time, generalizing it is quite difficult. But our challenge is to look into different kind of case studies and then trying to come up with more generalized solutions. This may sound like a little bit contradictory thing, but our challenge lies in there. We are also doing some analysis by reviewing the existing studies on synergies and trade-offs, and using this computer-based analytical tool to see what kind of ideas embedded in the existing studies regarding synergies and trade-offs. By doing this research, we try to go back to the original work that are included in this analysis, and then try to find the case studies that are included in individual studies, and then go further analysis. Well, this is the beginning of our project, so I just touched upon our methodology and what we are doing, but we want to collect data from different parts of the world and try to generalize specific concrete solutions to this synergy and trade-off issues. So if there are any potential partners who are sitting here who are interested in this issue, please come back to me after this session, and I'm happy to discuss more about how we can collaborate with each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Kanye. That was excellent. And I think what you mentioned, that people are saying that it's only 15% of implementation, true, but we still have 6 years to go. And using synergies and eliminating trade-offs can really accelerate the implementation of the SDGs. So it can be one of those key trigger things that can help us push and accelerate results. With that, I will turn to Mr. Mustafa Mounoudine. He's a fellow at the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies. Mustafa.
Thank you very much, Jimena. Hello, everybody. My name is Mustafa Mounoudine, and I'm a fellow of the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, an environmental think tank based in Japan. I was actually enjoying working there at the headquarters in Japan. I worked at IGS as a full-time researcher for 12 years and just recently relocated to New York. Professor Kanye has talked a lot about the importance of interlinkages, and I'm very excited to tell you about a tool. We call it the SDG interlinkages analysis tool that we developed at IGS. And I will also try to show you some of how the tool can be used for real life situations. So many of you may know that the SDGs are supposed to be implemented in an integrated, holistic manner. To do this, for effective policymaking, it is important to understand how these SDGs, the goals as well as the targets, there are 169 targets in the SDGs, they are linked to each other. This is because we need to know what happens if we make progress in one target, how does it affect the other targets, and what are the synergies and trade-offs? How do countries differ in terms of their linkages or the synergies and trade-offs, and what are the policy implications for this? So an integrated approach actually takes into consideration these connections, whereas a silo-based approach, if you think about work in a silo, it does not consider these connections. That is why it is important to understand the interlinkages. I will give you a little bit more detailed information here to show you, if we look deeper into these connections, you will see that these connections are very complex and they involve both synergies and trade-offs. Take the example of SDG target 2.3, which aims at doubling agricultural productivity. And as you can see in the figure, we have a network chart with some black lines and red lines. The black lines indicate target 2.3's positive or synergistic links with other SDG targets, and the red ones indicate trade-offs. So on the left side, you can see that the synergies are mostly related to poverty reduction and ending hunger and economic growth and so on. And trade-offs occur due to competition for water use, water pollution, environmental degradation, and so on. The chart here, the figure here you see, it is developed using the interlinkages tool, which I'm going to introduce now. So at IGS, we saw the importance of interlinkages right after the 2030 agenda and the SDGs were adopted. And using IGS SDG, SRF, or the Strategic Research Fund, we developed a tool in 2017, and it has been updated since then a few times. We call it the IGS SDG Interlinkages Analysis and Visualization Tool. I'll show you a snapshot of the tool very soon. But basically, it involves 4 steps starting with identifying the causal links among the 169 SDG targets. So we look at each target pair to see whether there's a connection or not. This is done through literature review, stakeholder consultation, and enhanced with artificial intelligence-based techniques. In step 2, we identify, we select the targets that have trackable data. Then in the step 3, we collect the time series data for about 30 years, 1990 to 2019, mostly from the official SDG indicators database, but sometimes we also use proxy data if the data is not available. And the third step, we quantify these relations, these interlinkages. In the first step, we identified the qualitative linkages, and in the fourth step, using the country-specific data, we quantified these linkages. And based on this, we developed country-specific dashboards with synergies and trade-offs for 27 countries, 22 from Asia and 5 from Africa, and an online analysis tool as well. And we can also use the information and the tool for additional information on identifying the priority targets, key targets, and also synergies and trade-off analysis. Here is a snapshot of the tool. You can see this is designed to support integrated SDG planning by visualizing the quantified causal links between SDG targets and identifying the potential synergies and trade-offs. The tool is online, available online. Anybody can access it. You can see the web link over here. The users can select a country and some targets and see how these targets are linked with other SDG targets. And the information you get is not only the connection, but also the direction, positive from where to where, whether it is positive or negative, and how strong the connections are. Please feel free to use it, try it if you want. And all the information about the methodology, data, and how to use it, everything is available from this website. We have the tool, our methodology has been recognized by many international organizations. It has been cited by in many policy reports as well as academic papers, and we have also used it for policy processes in a few countries. Here are examples from Bangladesh and Indonesia. For example, in Indonesia, the tool was used to develop the country's national SDGs roadmap, as well as for some parts of the voluntary national reviews 2019 and 2021. We have also used the tool to produce some scientific reports, academic papers. For example, the top left, bottom left corner, you see this colored book chapter. This is about, we use the interlinkages methodology to develop an analysis on the impact and implications of COVID-19 and COVID-19 countermeasures on achieving the SDGs from the point of view of sustainability and resilience. Let me explain a little bit more about integrating climate actions and the SDGs, particularly at the local level, subnational level. I'll give you a very brief example of this one. So in order to understand the interactions between Goal 13, which is our climate action, with other SDGs, we have developed, we call it a qualitative interlinkages model, which we developed using artificial intelligence-based natural language processing techniques for systematic literature review. And here we found more than 100 connections, and we covered a huge, a robust set of literature, and we could see more than 100 connections over here. In the interest of time, I cannot go into the details, but if you have any questions, you can ask me later. So I'll briefly mention about a case study that we conducted in Indonesia's Indonesian province of West Java to integrate climate actions and SDGs. We believe that actually the SDGs and climate actions, they are global agendas, but they're implemented at the local level, and local authorities have more capacity to implement these agendas. So in West Java province, we conducted a stakeholder consultation-based study that will provide inputs to the province's climate-related climate and SDG strategies, and also co-create knowledge together with the stakeholders. So we conducted an online survey as well as the focus group discussions, through which we raised awareness and knowledge co-creation. We published an and a discussion paper on this as well from our office at IGS. So the main takeaways from our stakeholder consultation-based study is that SDGs and climate actions are quite interlinked, and they overlap, and we need to integrate and co-develop their implementation plans. And it's important for us to understand how these interactions take place. And for Professor Keio mentioned that contextualizing is important. So that's why the stakeholder consultation was conducted. We needed to know the local knowledge on this. And these integrated approaches can connect national and local policies effectively. And to do this, we also need better governance, institutions and budgets, as well as empowering the civil society. Lastly, we also need scientific reports, scientific studies to support these initiatives. I'll stop here. Just one information is that we will have another side event on the 17th. So on the presentation, you'll find it. I'll stop it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And your maps were amazing. Amazing visuals. The one on the food at the center where you had the trade-offs, and then also the synergies. I think it made it really very real, you know, to understand through the examples. Also the SDG 13 one that had the 100 connections also made it very, you know, visually appealing to understand that. And you reminded me that, you know, the SDGs and the climate agreement are twins. We adopted the 2030 agenda in September 2015, and then we adopted Paris December that same year. So they were born, they were in the same bus, you know, the two children were in the same bus. And now we are seeing this kind of like toddler adolescence, and we're like in the last phase of really increasing momentum towards the 2030 agenda. So thank you very much. We are now moving to Ms. Eva Furman. She is the Secretary General of the Finnish Commission on Sustainable Development. Eva, it's a pleasure to have you with us. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, so very big thanks also from my side. I come from Finland, Finnish government, the Prime Minister's office, but I have my background in science, and that's how I also met Norichika Kani professor, because I was part of the group writing the first global report, and very much of the issues that have actually taken place in Finland is actually taking from the global report. We want to make the agreement that we have done in the global Agenda 2030 to our national one, so that we can contribute, and we also get contributions from other countries. So I would like to start from the GSDR report, the Global Sustainable Development Report, that was written from 2016 to 2019, which was in the very early time of the agenda. And even though you told that at the beginning the agenda was written in such a way that we knew that they are connected to a certain extent, the different SDGs, no one really took it seriously, and not even today. And I still remember at the early stage when we studied the 15 scientists from different parts of the world, when we realized that it's actually the systems that are bringing the different SDGs together, that is where the core is. The core is between the SDGs. It's not actually the SDGs itself. And I heard these very important people saying that, oh, they are all important, but our SDG is the most important. And I find that very problematic. But it's very natural, because our brain works in such a way that we see things in order. But in reality, the world is a big mess, and so are also the SDGs. They are connected to each other. And that's how the story comes. And we took the plan of the Global Sustainable Development Report, which actually emphasized that we need to transform the key systems of society to something more sustainable. how we produce food, how we produce energy, how we build our cities, how we actually organize our economy, which is really problematic at the moment, how we receive well-being and opportunities in life, and also how we treat our global environmental commons, which is the most important one. And we made a national interpretation of that, and that actually led to our strategy on sustainable development in Finland, which Prime Minister is leading. And we are not monitoring the SDGs. We do that for the United Nations, but nationally, we are actually monitoring the systems that are bringing all the 17 SDGs together. And one of the activities that we are now doing is this holistic assessment. It is something that the government officials are doing. It's not politically linked, but we are providing information to our political government on a yearly basis to understand how different SDGs are connected with each other. So, and that rises from the idea that early on, economy was really the core of our well-being. And today we know that we have big threats actually to human well-being, not only to the planet, from these ecological issues that we have, but not only ecological, but also other issues like digitalization and artificial intelligence, many others that I will soon show you. So our plan actually was that we don't look only on social, economic, and ecological issues, but we look at health and social issues. We look at democracy, justice of law, and safety. And then we look at human and cultural sustainability. And then we look at the economic one and the ecological one. And this is the model that we have. And what we are actually doing is that we are looking how each of these areas, systemic areas, are developing in the society. How are they today when the government has now built their program? How does Finland look like in these different issues? How is our democracy developing? How is the health issue? Is people getting healthy or not? And then after, we also make an estimate for 8 years ahead of us. So they know that if they do decisions, what will happen after 8 years when they have left. So because of this, we are moving forward on these issues to be able actually to provide the government on these different challenges that we have. And so we are now really doing this in the Prime Minister's office. There are 6 people who are working on this, and we are doing these reports. We are focusing usually on a certain topic. It can be, for example, mental illnesses of children. It can be some issues, for example, on our forest biodiversity, ecosystem services, or many others. We take only a couple for each year. But this is basically the idea what we are doing. But we, of course, need a lot of facts. Even though we accept that many issues we are not giving in numbers, but we are making scientific analysis which are based more on a qualitative description. It's still something that we need to work on to be able to make it as solid as possible. And then we also need, of course, to look at the interlinkages, because our main issue is to see how sustainable the society is as a whole. So actually the interesting thing is how these 5 different dimensions are actually affecting each other. And if we have, for example, ministers that are not so interested on the ecological issue, if we can show on a science base that if they, for example, are losing safety or losing individual capacity, sustainability of individual capacity, what kind of impacts does that then have on the ecology, or vice versa. If we are losing the social sustainability, what kind of impact does that have then on economic issues? And that makes the ministers to rethink their plan. It's all connected. So just to show we are working hard with different ministries on the facts, and also we plan to include the society in a broader sense. At the moment, we are working with our expert panel on sustainable development as well, and so this is where we are. We have been developing this for 2 years. We have come up with this first report, but actually the content-wise first report will be out in autumn. And it is all in Finnish. We have an abstract in English for it, but it's also new and it's very difficult. But we think that it's better that it's not perfect than if it's perfect and doesn't really tell us anything. I stop here. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so very much. And I love what you said about the core of the core is between the SDGs, not a singular SDGs. And I would love to hear more about that during the Q&A. Last but not least, we have Ms. Yvonne Lobos Alba from the Stockholm Environment Institute. And Yvonne, I think it's the only name I was able to pronounce without a butchering, so thank you.
For some reason.
Over to you.
Thank you. I don't know, I should say that it was pronounced differently or something. Yvonne, no, you did it perfectly. It's a pleasure to be here. How are you doing? Do you all have coffee? We're still in there? Good. I am going to talk to you a little bit about some of the work that we're doing at the Stockholm Environment Institute that some of you might have heard of. SEI has existed for over 30 years. And even though our office is in, of course, Sweden, our HQ, we have offices for Africa in Nairobi, for Asia in Thailand, and we also have offices in the US, in UK, and I am actually based out of our youngest office in Latin America, in Bogota, Colombia. And some of the work that we do as SEI really has to do with a concern almost, so also an excitement to understand synergies and study them and research them, but also a concern because I keep hearing, and many of you will have heard the same in the events now at HLPF, in the serious discussions over there about how delayed we are and how we have to go faster and accelerate. But what does accelerate mean? How do we pick the topics to accelerate? Do you just choose 1 or 2 topics and invest more in those and see what happens? We really need to think about how to make it strategic, effective, cost-effective, and faster, right? And this is something that we are trying to achieve with this analysis of integration of the SDGs, beyond just understanding what connects with what, which I think we can all agree to, right? Everybody here would agree that everything is connected in all of the topics of the SDGs, and they're all very complex and they're a system, right? But who here could tell me, maybe on the spot, how water quality is connected specifically to job development or economic growth or decent jobs, for example? It's not necessarily something that we are meant to know or to analyze as humans. Our brain is not built that way. So that's why we need tools and methods that can help us. And our starting point does come also from the Global Sustainable Development Report, the 2023 that Norichika was mentioning. Our Deputy Director, Osha Persson, was one of the other co-authors, so they spent quite a bit of time thinking about this framework and how to include also integration and interlinkages into the report. A question I have now is, of course, how governments are going to take on that report and build it into their policy making, but that's a question for Eva for the Q&A. In terms of research, we have several colleagues looking at all of the literature, all of the research on SDG interactions, and coming up with some of the trends that you can see on the SDGs, more at the global abstract level, right? Which are the SDGs that connect to each other, that do so in a positive or negative way, and also some of the gaps that, for example, or interestingly, SDGs on inequality, for example, or sustainable consumption and production, we have no idea how they connect to the others, or there's at least not a lot of research on it. And that's something that gives us a lot to think about. And I wanted to talk to you about this particular experience because the Office of the Secretary General of the UN asked us to do a baseline on how the SDGs are being implemented at the local level. Nordichika also mentioned this. These interactions really come to the reality and to the surface at the very local level. When you ask a mayor, a governor, okay, you take now the SDGs and figure out how to implement them all at the same time and make sure that they work. And we looked at many, many case studies around the world. And as you can imagine, it was a surprisingly low number, probably below 5% of countries at the local level, let's say cities and regions, that were looking at the SDGs from an integrated perspective, reporting on it or implementing them in an integrated way. So it's really not coming down to the level that we needed. We also are applying and just finishing applying the same methodology of baseline to the 8 countries of the Amazon basin for the Treaty Organization of the Amazon region and biome, which is another interesting example because the SDGs don't necessarily stay within the country limit, right? There's also things that spill over to other countries, to other regions, and that's something that we also need to look at, which we have now for water and climate, and that has really led us to see the big gap in cooperation at the regional level for SDGs that is really causing a lot of conflicts in terms of the different topics. And the first two, I will show you just 2 tools that we have, and these are open access, so you can use them, play with them, apply them to your exercises, policies, research, and we're happy to help you to do so. And that focuses on these type of interactions. SDG Synergies is based on cross-impact analysis, and it's really aimed to focus on a process of analysis, so not something that we do and then deliver, but rather that we do with the policymakers and with the stakeholders. So it takes a bit more time, but at least then everybody understands how we got to the nice graphs that we have at the end of everything is interconnected. And this also allows us to, in a very user-friendly way, prioritize topics and SDGs where you can really tell, okay, these are the 5 that are going to get me there to the finish line faster with less money involved and needed. And the questions that are usually asked are, what will happen if I achieve target A or goal A? What will happen to target B? And also, if those 2 interconnect, what will happen to all the others? So it's a whole network of connections that allows us to review. And we've applied it in Sweden, for the European Union at the environmental level of the SDGs, for Colombia, Sri Lanka, Mongolia, regionally as well. We're doing it now for Mexico, Uruguay. So there's a lot of experiences at different levels to analyze how these interactions come to the reality for different policies, for different topics. We've done it for mining, for development, for national development plans, and also to inform processes of policy updates. And it also was used for the Swedish National Voluntary Report in 2021, where they wanted to really show which of the SDGs were being supported and how they were impacting some of the others. And this is what their matrix looked like and how some of the topics that were prioritized, I think it's SDG 11, right? So cities and sustainable consumption and production and partnerships were the ones that were really highlighted as the ones bringing the whole agenda forward for Sweden, at least. And this is the second tool, and the last one that I want to show you is called Sapient, and we developed this together for several years now with the World Bank. They wanted to show their investors where their money was being put. Put your money where your words are, right? So then are we supporting the SDGs that the World Bank strategy says we are supporting? And they have so many projects, so many, it's a portfolio. So we did this with automated text analysis, machine learning, so that it can, in 2 minutes, you can feed it hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents, policies, projects, and it will produce this type of graph for you so that you can easily know very quickly which are the SDGs that you're really working with. And let's just say that that led them to a little bit of an adjustment in where they are putting their investments in terms of matching the strategy. And they have used these type of analysis now for their impact reports since 2021. This was the first one, but they've done it for the last 3 years using our methodology. And this is also something that we are launching now so that it can be openly used by anybody that wants to use it, and not necessarily just for the SDGs. Both tools that I showed you started off as SDG-based tools, but now we can use them to analyze also interlinkages and coherence to climate, to OECD standards to any type of agenda, basically, that you want to analyze and look at. And these are the links for the two tools. And yeah, I would just like to highlight now for the Q&A that we really need to focus on user-friendly processes that focus on integrating and engaging stakeholders and that make it easy to digest how complicated all these systems are. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. Amazing. Really, really lovely. I think we all have a lot of things to play with, lots of maps to learn from, Sapient and the others. The beautiful map of the Amazon, you know, and the basin, I think really exemplifies how borders are political, but they're not, you know, the Amazon is a great example of cross-border collaboration. Yvonne has a 2-minute, Eva has a 2-minute finger on a global forum of sustainable development advisory board that she will quickly present like in Twitter form, and then we'll open it to Q&A.
Thank you, and sorry about the misunderstanding here at the beginning, but I'm fine with the first slide and try to give you a very short introduction because me personally from the Prime Minister's Office and our Commission on Sustainable Development, and then Professor Kani from Japan, the panel from Japan are members of this global forum, which is an excellent forum that provides and supports advisory boards all around the world. In several countries, we have tens of members, and we are in the steering group of that, and they are also co-organizers of this event. Why are they co-organizers in this event is that actually this body, which is a multi-stakeholder body, bringing together these advisory boards is very much aiming for sustainability transformation. So they are not going through only with the SDGs, but they are taking the big picture. And that's why they are here as well. And as there are many of you here, I would like to say that it would be excellent to have more members or more interested bodies of that kind. So there's a paper in front, and tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock in Scandinavia House, there's an event. So please, you are most welcome. But what it can offer is, it can, for example, help in setting up multi-stakeholder bodies. It helps to how to moderate these kind of bodies. And it also offers different kind of activities. We are working only online. We have meetings once in 2 years, so that we don't need to travel. And it's a very active body. So if you are interested, ask us too after this event. And I just wanted to emphasize because they kindly wanted also to be co-hosts here. So thank you.
Thank you, Eva. So now my dear colleagues from my PI, they have a mic, a floating mic. So if you have questions, please raise your hands and one of my colleagues will bring the microphone to you. Are there some questions from the floor?
Hello, dear colleagues. I would like perhaps if you could give an example, any one of you, of how the work you're doing helped you implement at the local level a project.
Thank you. We may take a few questions at a time. The other lady just in front of Livy.
Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Ryutaro Murotani from Japan International Cooperation Agency, and thank you very much for this wonderful session and the presentation. I am really interested in looking at your methodologies. To even complicate the discussion, I have 2 questions. Through your analysis, did you find any commonalities or differences of the interactions between the different targets and the indicators across countries or regions? Are they common globally, or are there regional or country differences? That's my first question. And the second question is, The other elements of the difficulties of these following these SDG indicators is that it's not only about the country level indicators, but we wish to see the disaggregated performances between genders or subnational regions. So are there any efforts to investigate how disaggregated indicators are interacting with each other?
Great. And last, there's another question here in the front. It's the mic.
Well, thank you so much. I'm afraid that this is the first time I have attended such a meeting, and I'm very grateful. Thank you. I'm very limited in my information about this topic, so I apologize for my very basic question. And I read the material before I came, or at least some material. I honestly didn't see any interpretation for what an SDG is, believe it or not. I am guessing that this is Sustainable Development Goal. Is that correct? Thank you. I have been involved with some international work in Liberia, West Africa. That's my major reason for being here. And I've been over there 8 times every year, so I know how that country works or doesn't work. Let's put it that way. But my question is really a simple question. These goals that you mentioned so often, and I was trying to understand them, where did they come from? Was this the United Nations that agreed upon these? Okay, I assumed the right. Some years ago in 2016, there are goals generally accepted that we need to study to further the future of our planet. And my particular, then I understood that I think it was Mr. Moyne, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, mentioned that you were in, or among those goals when they originated, there were 5 African countries that were studied or their goals were looked at, and 16 European or Asian, perhaps Asian. So since I have this interest in Africa, I'm just wondering if you could describe briefly how you chose those 5 or how they were chosen, whether they were high economically developed or poor, or did you have a mixture? And as you say, the commonalities, because I have done some study about the agriculture in Liberia. It's a major country for agriculture, and it's extremely difficult. And I think it was Mercy Corps did a report in 2016 as to why young people are not going into agriculture. And it all has to do with what you're studying and trying to bring these synergies together. And it's very important to me because that is the way for them to be able to feed themselves in the future. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, there's one last. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, Emi Sanchez Nishimura from Mexico. So what have you found to be the biggest challenge when trying to implement these more innovative solutions for the first time? Like what kind of resistance, especially from private sector? Because the more quality information you have, the more strategic decisions you can make. And sometimes the private sector doesn't like that very much. So I would love to hear your insights on that.
Wonderful. What a great set of questions and very diverse. So I will give the floor now this way, since we started from here to here. Yvonne, you can start, and then we go this way. Is that okay?
Let's see. Let's start with the local level impact, because the question of impact is so important, and we ask that of ourselves every single day, and that's also a pain in the neck to be thinking about that all the time, to be honest, but it is important because otherwise what happens to all the knowledge that we produce? And one story that I have there to share is that even though we have had a lot of impact at the national level, let's say in the case of Colombia, that we ran an SDG synergies analysis for the entire mining energy sector. So we did manage to include a lot of indicators, for example, that were not included before because of the analysis. There were not any gender considerations in all of the national energy, fossil fuels, electricity, and mining plans. And they were all updated after this type of approach. Water quality was also not included in terms of the indicators. So that's a very clear, let's say, impact that we see. But also at the regional level, at that time, we also ran a national and regional level analysis because we're very interested in these spillovers, right? And not just what happens at the national level. And at the local level in the region of Antioquia, where Medellin is, there's in Colombia as well, there was the priority to work on agriculture, sustainable agriculture. And at the national level, the priority was sustainable cities and less waste. So of course you see the discrepancies already from the regional to the national. And a private foundation then started to work after our analysis with the regional government to implement agricultural projects based out of this prioritization, because that was the topic that they saw as the most catalytic to move the SDGs in the region, for example. Then I would comment in terms of disaggregated performance. It really depends on who we're working with, and that's really important to get to the nitty-gritty and the details. So for example, right now we are running an analysis. My colleagues are in Ireland at the moment because the Irish government is collaborating with us to review food policies, food system policies in Vietnam, in Malawi, and in Zambia, compared also to the Irish performance. And the idea there is to run SDG synergies analysis, but to align all of these policies and their indicators at the indicator level to not only the SDGs, but also One Health, right? So the well-being of people, animals, and the environment. So as I mentioned, a lot of agendas also bring in things to complement the SDGs. So you can go from the macro to the very specific micro indicator level in that particular case. And then I shut up with just saying that in terms of challenges and the resistance to change, as I mentioned, we're not really built to think in terms of systems. So anything that brings that new dimension into any type of decision making makes us step back a little bit and say, okay, my brain computer doesn't really process this, so this is not something that I really want to do, which is why I was emphasizing the importance of making it user-friendly beyond our nice graphs, really making it about the process and explaining the benefit that you can have in terms of better information for decision-making. That has been our approach to try to get at least more private sector, more banks involved in this type of thinking and analysis.
Thank you. I'll continue here. I again would like to start on this local issue that the first question was on. And it's really important at the moment. We are running the meeting now in the United Nations, the high-level political forum on sustainable development. And localization is really coming up every year, stronger and stronger. And it really is the place where things happen. And I have seen this move also. I started by getting very interested in the kind of high level and strategic level, and then moved very strongly to the local level. And now I see that to be able to be on the local level, you actually need also the strategic level. So I give you two examples, and one comes from Africa, which is from the Global Sustainable Development Report. The story goes like this, that there was a village which was growing vegetables, and they wanted to take them to the market, and it all got spoiled on the way because it was so hot, and they didn't get there in time to sell some fresh with good value. So there was a company that came and provided a high-tech car where you can have a fridge that works on sun, and then you get, in a way, the business working. You get the fruit there in good condition. But to be able to get this chain, and we were talking about these different phases in acceleration and then stabilization in actually moving to the sustainable side. So it's not enough that one company helps somebody, but you need to change the whole system. So you need to make changes in the policies, that they support the people, that they support that the company gets some kind of, that it's allowed to function in a certain way. You need the science under it that provides these new technological outcomes. And then you also need the community that is interested in doing this. So actually, when we talk about sustainable development, it's not something very, this high level it's more a tool, as we heard, than something very, like this bottle. So it's a tool that you can do lots of different kind of things. In Finland, we have been again working with schools, and the school children don't like to eat vegetable food, and we need to have vegetarian food because it's more sustainable. And so there you also then bring in the policymakers, you bring in the companies that are providing the food, the wonderful, wonderful, mostly women that are making the food to the children, and the children themselves who are actually taking part in what kind of food is something that they find tasty when it's vegetarian, make the recipes. So this is another example how you can actually make changes. And this is practical, local level, but then you can upscale it to the global level, to the national level. We have 2 school food sessions, for example, taking place. One is by France, one is by Finland, and I know Brazil is very keen on these issues as well. So I take only those 2 up and leave the others then to the rest.
Wonderful. Those are some great examples. Steph?
Thank you very much. So I'll try to address a few questions, first starting with the application at the local and national level. I will limit it to the application of our tool in policymaking in some of the Asian countries. So first, I think it was in 2018, the government of Bangladesh, the Prime Minister's Office of the government of Bangladesh, they contacted me because at that time they were prioritizing, making a priority list of the SDG indicators. And the idea was to come to inform the line ministries how to implement these priority indicators and targets. But they were facing one issue: how to convince the line ministries that these are the important ones. So from our side, we conducted interlinkage analysis to come up with a list of 30 key indicators, key targets for Bangladesh that they could compare with their own list and to justify or give sort of a justification that there is a scientific value behind it. But of course, I mean, they came up with one list, we developed another list. There were some common ones, some were different, and eventually there was some sort of compromise it was on their discretion to decide which one they will be using or how they will revise the list. But yes, we provided quite detailed consultation at that time to the Prime Minister's Office, the Governance Innovation Unit of Bangladesh. Then the year after, the same year, I was invited by the University of Pajajaran in Bandung in Indonesia. They wanted to know a little bit more about the interlinkages analysis methodology. And during I conducted a training there, and we had a 6-member delegation from the National SDGs Secretariat participating in that event. And the National SDGs Secretariat was developing the SDGs roadmap for Indonesia. And after the training program, they actually adapted our interlinkages methodology, results from our interlinkages methodology, and also conducted further analysis to come up with their own, to kind of justify or to come up with their own list of priority targets. And they added one full chapter in the on interlinkages in the SDG interlinkages, on the interlinkages in their SDGs roadmap. So yeah, these are some of the examples of policy intervention or like supporting policy processes. We have also worked in Japan. For example, in the Sado Island, a small island near Niigata, their city development plan, they used we provided technical advice there as well, and the interlinkages methodology was also used there. And as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, that I also conducted a stakeholder consultation analysis, and based on that, we provided a discussion paper, which was which was used to raise awareness and co-create knowledge. So I think that probably covers some of my examples related to national and local implementation of our activities. I'll move on to the question about African countries. When we develop our analysis tool, the first version only had 9 countries, but we always wanted to increase the number of countries. Initially, we started with Asia because IGS, my institute, prioritizes Asia-Pacific region. And eventually we started like increasing the country coverage. Now we cover all the countries in East, Southeast, and South Asia. And on several occasions, we also received some requests or like some activities related to a few African countries. Normally, I mean, Africa is not our stronghold, not the place where we work, but we have had a few occasions where we had to work in a few of these countries, particularly with UNEP, and also maybe on one occasion with UNDESA. So we developed some knowledge, and we also thought that since we want to expand the country coverage, why don't we also try to look into some of the African countries? So right now we have 27 countries, including 5 African countries, but we do want to expand it. We do want to include more countries. At this day, at the moment, just these 5 countries include Tanzania, then South Africa, Senegal. I mean, I can't remember at the moment, but 2 other countries. So yeah, we're going to expand it more eventually, but at the moment it's this situation. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Kanya.
Yes, thank you for those excellent questions. First, I would like to address this local practices of implementation. I think there are many cases where synergies are addressed at local level, and there are some examples are also included in our report as well. But in often cases, those cases are limited to their own limited circle. Like if you address gender and other issues, then that knowledge is limited within those people working on gender issue. Or if you're working on water, then that knowledge is limited to water issue. So what we are trying to do is to connect those knowledge that are existing out there. There are many practices to connect them to each other and try to analyze systematically on how those things are taking place at local level. So that's already a lot of work that we have to do, as there are many instances of those cases. The tools developed by IGES or SEI is quite useful to consider synergies and trade-off and implement it at local level. But I think that's a starting point. What we need is the tools to overcome trade-offs and to enhance policies that enhance synergies. And that is, again, limited to those different issues. And what we need is to connect those knowledge together. The reason why I came up with this idea is because in the process of writing this GSDR published last year, we were trying to develop some tools for transformation, collecting those data, but it was, so distributed, and so those informations are in different places, and we didn't have enough time to collect all those data. So that's why I am quite interested in doing this. Eva, you.
Yes, I think that was a very important and interesting point. I would still say that it's the science that is missing, but in other means, local level is easier to, in a way, to work because everything is so, it's like a laboratory of a country. And you have the people, in a way, know each other, and the municipalities are much smaller. So it's only the fact that the science is really missing. There is not the facts, and that's why it's really helpful to be able to work that way. But because of that, one of these areas of transformation in the Global Sustainable Development Report is actually urban, because it's in a way a laboratory that you can use.
So the solution may be out there, but we have to, systematically analyze it. And that is necessary for accelerating actions towards more sustainable world. So that's one thing. Another thing, so there are many things in common, as there was one question about, commonality about this synergies and trade-off. There are many common issues out there, for example, silos and lack of coordination or budgetary constraints and so on. And we all face those problems. But there are some places, especially at local level, where those obstacles could be overcome. But those cases are quite considering quite well the local context. And in some cases, stakeholder dialogues or stakeholder participations are there in order to make it possible. But again, we have to study more about those different cases in order to come up with more common ideas to overcome the obstacles. Lastly, about the question regarding the private sector. I think for them, we need to translate the language into their language. So for example, synergies and trade-offs may not work in the business world, but if you talk about efficiency, then that matters for them. So I think synergies and trade-offs is a language for policymakers, but when we talk to business people, it's about efficiency, resource efficiency or efficiency for using human capital. And if you can be successful in translating the language into theirs, then they could probably start working on that. And that is, another thing that we could also consider doing, but we haven't done so much on that yet.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Before closing the event, we have a 2-minute video from the president of Institute for Global Environmental Strategies. And then we will close the event. Thank you so much for your presence here.
Distinguished speakers, esteemed guests, my name is Kazuhiko Takeuchi, president of the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, IGES. It is my great pleasure to deliver these closing remarks at today's side event. The topic of synergy is one that I am very familiar with. I joined the first UN Climate and SDGs Synergy Conference in Copenhagen 5 years ago, and I currently serve as a member of the UN Synergy Expert Group to launch the Global Synergy Report 2024 at the High Level Political Forum, HLPF, special event on 16th July. IGES is committed to supporting the integration of synergetic approaches into policy-making processes at all levels, as well as promoting synergies in accordance with the Synergy Resolution adopted at the 6th UN Environment Assembly this year. As a part of this commitment, IGES has joined Professor Kanye's new research project, which focuses on collecting good practices and developing a methodology for identifying and promoting synergetic approaches. I believe that today's discussions can spur further progress on our journey to seek synergetic solutions. Let me conclude by extending an invitation to everyone to join the International Forum for Sustainable Asia and the Pacific, or ISAP, organized by IGES. This major event will take place in Yokohama and online on July 23rd. This year's theme is taking an integrated approach to overcome the triple planetary crisis. Thank you once again for this opportunity, and I wish you a wonderful time in New York.
And a warm thanks also to our incredible panelists and their work. Thank you very much for showcasing all these wonderful tools that will help us accelerate implementation of the SDGs. And as our speakers also conveyed, this is an open call for collaboration. So if you are interested in this, please speak with our colleagues after we close. So thank you very much. Thank you.